Okay, deck construction part 1. So, in this video series, I'm not going to actually read through all of the rules from top to bottom or anything, but we're just going to go over all the basics. And a lot of this was gone through in the how to play videos and also in the additional how to play video where we went through the activation types for primary abilities. So I may cover some of those other topics again briefly here, just going over the Cthulhu deck. But just kind of starting at the beginning, Mage War, first edition by Marc Wolff, 2019, a free trading card game where you can construct your own cards and make decks to battle other players for 2 to 4 players, ages 12 plus. To win a battle, be the last player remaining in a battle. And by the way, I think in the additional notes video, I stated that Venom was a win condition, but it's actually a player elimination condition. In a 2-player game, it's a win condition. But right now, the only other win condition in Mage War is the playtest ability, which is victory, and that is not an official. It's still a playtest ability, so not. I mean, you could run a tournament where you could allow people to use it, but it is not meant to be tournament legal. So the main win condition is being the last player remaining, and Venom is a player elimination thing. But otherwise, when you're making a deck, no matter what deck you have, this does not include cube format. We'll go over draft later. But just making a normal deck, normal Mage War deck, you have 90 mana points, which are called MP, to spend to make your deck, and that is represented on these cards here, right here. So this is this card's deck cost, and this is using the cube format rules for rarity, so this makes it a common, and all the cards have their deck cost in this deck written here. So deck cost is good to keep track of. You have 90 total to spend on all the cards in your deck. Again, Mage War decks are usually about somewhere around 30 cards. This one's 23. And then you've also got the play cost up here. And this is the cost, the amount of MP you have to spend to play this card in game. And for auras right now, deck and play cost always equal each other, but in future editions there will be special abilities for auras, so you can have differing play costs. Items can differ because they can have the attack defense bonus, and for allies, actually, deck and play cost are never equal because they have attack and defense. So first, let's go into the most basic allies here. Let's pull out a good ally. All right. So we've got our little shogi, and down here we've got 1/4. So whenever you're assigning attack and defense to an ally, attack and defense has to be a minimum of 1/1. So none of these values can be 0 in Mage War. So the minimum deck cost for an ally is 2, so 1/1, and you pay the deck cost added together of attack and defense. So if you just had an ally with 1/1, no abilities, it would cost a deck cost of 2 out of your 90. And to calculate play cost, it is attack and defense added together divided by 2 rounded down. So for 1/4, that's going to be 5 divided by 2 rounded down is going to be 2. So 2 out of this 3 is from the 1/4. Infamy 1 is a secondary ability, so that adds 1 as well. Although, of course, some may cost differently, but just for Infamy 1, it's just 1 MP that adds to both the play and deck cost. So total here for this ally, you can see it's got 1/4, which is 5. Infamy 1, I'll just tell you, costs 1 MP. So total you've got 6 for deck cost, and that makes this ally a rare. And since it has 2 play cost from having 5 total attack and defense, and Infamy 1 adds 1, we've got a total play cost of 3. So that's how you make an ally. And now we can get down into primary abilities. Although another note here, so no cards can have a cost of 0, so you can't give them 0 cost abilities. They can't have a play cost of 0. And that was actually one of the reasons for the item edit. Items, when they have special abilities, they add to both the deck and play cost. But that means that you can have an item with just nothing else but a special ability. So for primaries, we already went over the 4 activation types. And so I'll just kind of repeat a little bit here, but for auras, you don't specify the activation type. You just write the primary ability on the card, and you choose whether that activates, unless it says otherwise on the ability. When you play that card, which is immediately discards it unless it has a world ability, or you can have it in play and at any point later DC activate it by discarding it from play. So the first one is AUP, activated upon playing. The second activation type is DC, discard from play. And primary abilities, cycle is a primary ability, you always write them in all caps. And we'll get to world abilities here in a second, but yeah, primary abilities are always in all caps. And when you write them on an ally, if you don't specify an activation method, like if you just wrote cycle on an ally, that would be op activated cycle. You actually have to specify the activation method to get DC, DA, or TP activation types for an ally. Auras obviously can't have DA and can't have TP either. But the next thing to note about primaries is that each card can only have one primary, up to one primary. And auras either need to have a primary and or they need to have a world ability. So if they have a world ability, they don't have to have a primary. They can also have both. But if they don't have a world ability, then in order to be an aura, it needs to have at least one, or you can only have one, but it needs to have a primary ability. So an aura can't have just secondary abilities or just a secondary ability or even special. It needs to have a primary. And unless otherwise noted, all primary abilities cost 1 MP, both deck and play cost. And the exceptions are some abilities cost more than 1, but then the activation types, when you give them to allies, the DA and TP activation types don't add to play cost, they just add to deck cost for that ally. But yeah, for auras, they always add deck and play cost, no matter what their cost is. Like if it's a 3 cost ability, it'll add both 3 deck cost and 3 play cost to that aura. And in terms of the number of abilities that you can add, so let's see here, let's try and find one. So actually, I think redirect is probably a limited ability. Pretty sure it is. Yeah, it's limited. Counter, is counter limited? Yep, counter is limited, damn. Death? Okay, so death is an example of an ability that is not limited, and that means that you can have up to 3 auras and 3 allies in the same deck with this ability, but the allies need to have an ally variant, and the 2 ally variants are DA and TP activation. So if an ally has op death or DC death, then that counts towards the total number of auras with death in a deck. So in this deck, I think there's only 1 death aura, but I could have up to 3 death auras and 3 allies with either DA and or TP death. Not like 6, but like, 2 with DA and 1 with TP. Just 3 ally variants of death in addition to 3 auras of death. Or you could have 3 allies with op death and 3 allies with DA death. That would also work, because 3 allies with op death count towards the total number of auras. And then the other limitations are required and restricted, which means you must and may, and this only applies to Cycle, have one card with Cycle in your deck. Cycle is the only card, or the only ability in Mage War that is both restricted and required. Then there are some abilities that are restricted. For instance, Anomaly. You can only have up to one instance of Anomaly in a deck. And then limited, so like Counter or Redirect. Redirect's another one. You can only have up to 3 instances of Redirect in a deck. And then semi-limited only applies to Greed, and Greed is another primary. You can have up to 2 Greed auras and 2 Greed allies in a deck, so that's semi-limited. And then that's it for kind of the limitations, but it'll state that for each of the abilities. And otherwise, you can have unlimited, which is up to 3 allies and 3 auras. So, moving on then to secondary and special abilities. So, secondary abilities add both deck and play cost to a card. There are some secondaries that can be both for auras and allies, and some that are just for allies. I don't think there are any aura exclusive secondaries, and there are no aura exclusive specials right now. But so secondary adds to both deck and play cost. Special abilities just add to deck cost. They do not add to play cost. But unlike primary abilities, you can have any number of cards in a deck with a secondary or a special ability, no matter what those are. So if you wanted to, you could make an entire deck that had the Celerity special ability, or Hallowed, or Warded. And secondary abilities are written uppercase, or written capitalized, but the rest of them, okay, yeah, so Warded. So Warded is a secondary ability, and you'll see just the first letters capitalized. And Breach is a special ability, and it's capitalized but in quotes. So Warded is a secondary, Breach is a special ability. They're both capitalized, but special abilities are in quotes. And so yeah, if you wanted an entire deck where all the cards had any number, and you can have multiples on a card, so like you saw that one card had both Warded and Breach. You can include multiple specials or multiple secondary abilities on the same card. You can mix and match. You can do whatever you want. There's no limitations on that, except for, I think, Clone can't have those clone. Each of the different sections for secondary, special, and world abilities have a clone note where you can't give Clone those abilities. But other than that, they're pretty open. So you can check those out, and we'll go through some of those in the future for actual, like this deck has secondary and special abilities, so you'll get to see some of those. But then the next one is world abilities, and world abilities are written like, so Afflict is a world ability. So there's 2 different variants of a world ability. The first one here is written in all caps with quotes around it. The other variant is written in all caps, but instead of quotes, it's surrounded by a greater than, less than symbols, or less than, greater than, because left to right. And these world abilities, unless otherwise noted, there's only one of them. You can have up to 3 each world ability in a deck. And these world abilities with the quotes add to both the deck and play cost of a card. The abilities that are surrounded by the less than, greater than symbols don't add play cost to allies, but they do add play cost to auras. And so that is the basics of that there. And again, all of these different sections, all of the beginning of each of the ability sections have additional rules that you should read, and just reading through, you'll see all the different variations and things like that. But then the next ability type is exchange abilities. And exchange abilities look like this. Lowercase in parentheses, barter and debt and barter, these are both exchange abilities. And the way exchange abilities work, you can give them to auras and allies. You can't give them to items, but you can only include up to 3 of each of them in a deck. And they don't add deck or play cost to a card, but they have their own kind of cost and benefit. And right now, the only benefits are all of the exchange abilities allow you to draw 1 card. In the future, they'll have different variations, but right now, all of the exchange abilities give you draw 1 card, and they have different costs. And these are the costs that you have to pay in order to play the card. If you can't pay the cost, then you can't play the card. If you run into unable to use flash, battery power low. What? I just charged. Let's try and okay. I think the flash turned off. I'm sorry. The battery shouldn't be low. But wow, that's really Let me try see if I can fix that here. Can I? Okay. So, actually, yeah, I'm going to cut the video off here and refilm for part 2. We're going to continue on with our discussion of exchange abilities, and then we're going to go into a quick discussion of items, and then we'll actually get back into kind of more fundamentals of deck construction philosophy and things to, how to get started and whatnot. Stay tuned. Sorry about that. Also, well, I guess I should finish off the video. Yeah, thanks for watching. Links in the description. Part 2 soon.